Before we get into today's video, which I feel like this is a great time to do this because I know so many of you have been waiting on this specific video, I wanted to show you all what I just got in the mail literally like 10 minutes ago. And that is that I just received... I don't even know what to say getting this. This is something that I don't think I ever thought I was going to reach, if I'm being completely honest. This is such a huge deal for me. So I thought no better way to start this video than to just show it off and say thank you to every single one of you. Now let's get into the video. It's time. Okay, I'm not Mariah Carey. A lot of you have been waiting on this type of video. I have been promising this video for a very long time, but after many attempts at scripting and editing and recording and just not feeling right about it, I have decided to scrap that idea and we are going to just yap about Tanjiro. And I'm going to tell you why I love him, why he's my favorite character, talk about maybe a couple things I see on the internet and debunk some misconceptions. He is very misunderstood. A lot of people, when they hear me say Tanjiro Kamado is my favorite character in all of media, they instantly are like, so you're boring? And I'm like, red flag. So let's talk about Tanjiro Kamado, but before we do, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment your thoughts. This video is actually the start of a new series I'm going to be doing on my channel in 2026, where once a month I'm going to do a yap about a Demon Slayer character. From the next video on, it's going to be randomized, where I'm literally going to put all the character names in a wheel of names, and whoever pops up, I have to talk about. I'm starting with Tanjiro just because he is my favorite character, and I have been promising a video like this for a while. But if you are interested in this series, as well as all the other series that I'm doing, including doing a Demon Slayer watch through, watching meta list, shipping characters, talking about ships, like tier lists, hit that subscribe button and join in on the fun. Let's get into it though. And for the record, I am gonna have to talk about some manga spoilers, but I'm going to attempt to silo them to the end of the video so that people who have not read the manga can get some out of this video. A lot of my thoughts about Tanjiro and like his character arc as a whole, obviously I'm gonna have to talk about manga spoilers because his character arc takes place over the entire story and the entire story has not been animated yet, but I'm going to put like a warning when I get there. So if you are an anime only, you are good to watch until I tell you to stop. I do feel a little nervous just talking about him without any script or anything because it's actually kind of daunting for me to talk about things that I truly love because I feel like I can never do them justice, but I'm gonna do my best with this. And I'm gonna try and kind of stay a little bit organized and kind of talk about his life chronologically, I think, and just go over things that I noticed and what I love about him. I'll talk about some things that people say that are like, that's not really true of him. Like, I'll talk about the fact that he's not moral Jesus. Everyone's like, oh, he has no flaws. It's like, yes, he does. So let's talk about it. So I kind of want to start, like I said at the very beginning, I think Tanjiro as an older brother. So from the very beginning, and this is something I catch on very early on, like I caught on very early on in my first watch through, is that Tanjiro is actually kind of a victim of a bit of like a cycle that's not necessarily a good cycle of like the oldest has to be strong, you know? And we see that come up a lot. So he's raised as the eldest of 6 children. And I think a lot of people kind of brush over the fact that his parents, I believe, knew the entire time that they were having children that Tanjiro, the father, was going to die young. Like he was already terminally ill. And yet they conceived many children, which, you know, there's levels and nuance to, like, technically none of us know, like anyone could die tomorrow in a car crash, you know, like you never really know. But when you have like that type of knowledge, like you absolutely aren't going to make it past your 30s. I think it's a little bit problematic to have that many kids. Knowing that like even the youngest, like Rokuta, had he survived, obviously he never lived past like 3 or 4, he would have never like known his dad. And I think like knowingly putting children into that state is a little bit problematic. But at the same time, like Tanjiro was still raised with a lot of love. The family was very loving. He was taught many good things of hard work and, you know, he was helping his dad sell charcoal, like he was taking on the mantle of the family. But you kind of have to question like why a 13-year-old even is in that position in the first place, because Tanjiro was put in a very difficult situation early on. He is a young child who now has to take care of a family because his parents chose to have multiple children, knowing that the dad wouldn't be around, so therefore their eldest had to be in charge. Anyway, that could be another video for another day, but I think that gives context of Tanjiro's personality and motives throughout the story, because we see time and time and time and time again, and we see it in the first episode, that Tanjiro, when he experiences trauma or grief or loss, his natural reflex is really like more shock and more denial than it is to just be sad. And I think that comes from how he was raised. He's raised in a way where he loves his family very fiercely. They all grow up living in the mountains in this like 1-bedroom little tiny house. So there's a lot of love there. And I think that had Nezuko died in episode 1 as well, he would have gone down a very different path. But because Nezuko lived and he had this goal, he was able to kind of take the love that he had for his entire family and pour it into just Nezuko. Which is why I felt like, and I talked about this when I watched episode 1, it's already uploaded, he's in like this denial, because technically when you say like they're still warm, that doesn't mean that they're still alive. It just means that they were the last to die, right? And then of course, in the case of Nezuko, she was actually still alive. She was just turning into a demon. But I think that's like an important like psychological state to kind of talk about first, is I do think the way he was raised, and he brings it up quite a lot, like, I'm the eldest sibling. If I weren't the eldest sibling, I wouldn't be able to do this. He has a very unhealthy way of coping, and that is people rely on you, so you push it down, right? Like, we see it time and time again that it doesn't seem like he's reacting how a normal human being would react to the amount of loss that he is going through, but it really stems from the fact that he is the eldest sibling, raised in a way where he already knew, like, he's already experienced loss because his dad died, and he already knew that he was going to be in charge of like taking over at a very young age. So like there's a lot of nuance within just his background, because like when you see his family, you see a very loving and very like healthy relationship. But I feel like if you peel back some of the layers, like he was a victim from the start, because I do think it is slightly problematic that his parents chose to have so many kids when the dad was not going to live that long, and put so much pressure on his shoulders to the point of he's not able to process his pain and trauma that he experiences throughout the course of the show properly, because he feels like he always has to be the strong one, even for people outside of his family. You know, like when he meets Zenitsu and Inosuke, and even like for Giyu and for Mitsuri and for Muichiro, he becomes this like emotional pillar of support for them, but who's there to be his emotional pillar of support? He never really has that. He briefly has it with Rengoku, and then we see what happens, which I'll talk about in a little while. So that's kind of my very long drawn out way of starting. In order for us to talk about his character, I think we have to understand that a lot of people brush over the childhood that he had, kind of bred him into a kid that doesn't process trauma properly. He just pushes it down, because if he were to stop and let his emotions get to him, then he wouldn't be that pillar of support for the other people that he's like been raised to be like, you must be the pillar of support for your younger siblings. And then that continues even after all of his siblings, except for Nezuko, are dead, that he has to be that emotional support for other people, even if they're older than him, that sort of thing. So starting out kind of with that, I think that it's really interesting to get into the psychological brain of his, because a lot of people just brush it over as, oh, he just kind of always grins and bears. And I do think there are certain times in the story where I think they could have delved a little bit deeper into his emotional turmoil. And I think that was an opportunity in the writing, personally, that sometimes it just seems a little bit like he's just always happy when he's going through all this pain. But that's how he was raised. Like, you have to understand that he was raised with this idea that like you have to just always be that emotional support. So moving on from that, Tanjiro's character throughout the course of the anime doesn't have to change a lot. So at the end of the day, like, his character motive is very different from a lot of other characters. You know, I just watched My Hero Academia from start to finish, where Midoriya has this, I want to be the greatest hero. I want to be the #1 hero. He's working towards this very specific personal goal. While Tanjiro's has always been selfless, but also there's like a selfish side to it. So you can say it's selfless because his goal has always been about Nezuko and turning her back into a human. However, on the flip side, you can say, well, his goal is always to just return to what life was. Like, his goal is, he wants to turn Nezuko into a human, essentially to get back the life that he had. And he doesn't really understand, I think, that he can get that. This yap is going in a very different route than I was expecting, honestly, but I kind of like where it's going, so we're gonna run with it. In season 1, it's kind of the start of Tanjiro's story, right? We see what happens to him with his family. He goes through a couple of episodes of training, and then he becomes a demon slayer. He takes on some missions, he gets a little bit stronger, he meets some new friends. It feels like at the end of season 1, we have definitely grown a lot, mostly in strength, right? Because Tanjiro at the very beginning obviously was not a skilled swordsman at all. He didn't know how to wield a sword. He had an axe with him. And he definitely had some like natural tendencies within like battle, because him being able to take on Gyu in the way that he did in episode 1 is like a natural ability to adapt and understand the situation. But obviously there's a lot of growth. Each battle he gets stronger. Each battle, he's learning to not use empathy as a weapon, but use it as a strength instead, which is going to lead me to a big point that I see people talk about on the internet, and that is that he is too empathetic for the demons. I see a lot of people compare him to Naruto and like say it's talk no jutsu. I see a lot of people say that the empathy is like a weakness or it just makes him boring, but I feel like the empathy that Tanjiro shows is very different and it's not anywhere close to what like Naruto does. So I am currently watching Naruto for the first time, and I watched the Pain arc a few months ago. And for those of you who don't know, essentially Naruto is able to, I want to say this without like majorly spoiling in case people don't really want to know Naruto spoilers, but Naruto is able to resolve a very drastic and horrible situation by talking to the villain. Tanjiro doesn't ever do that. He learns very quickly, because we see when he meets with Okadaki, with the demon that like they ran into at the shrine, that his empathy was going to be a weakness, right? Because he hesitated in that moment to kill the demon because he didn't want the demon to suffer, even though the demon was just tormenting the two of them, right? Like, he was being very, very, like, not good, right? Like, he was trying to kill them, but also, like, kind of playing with them. And then when it came time where he had gotten him kind of trapped, he didn't want the demon to suffer, and he wasn't able to deal the final blow. But then we see in Final Selection, he's already kind of overcome that. That is character development, by the way. I know it's not like this big thing that takes over the course of the entire anime, but he still is, like, it starts out as a weakness that he has to learn from. Like, he has to learn that these demons maybe are deserving of empathy, but you can't let that stop you from ending their lives. You know, again, it's kind of different from Aang. Like, Aang in Avatar: Last Airbender is a monk who is a pacifist, and he doesn't want to kill. And there's a lot of back and forth with that, but he ends up, instead of it being something he has to grow from, it's something that he is able to use like a new... I think that worked well for Aang's story, and the way Tanjiro's written is just as good. It's just, it goes a different route, because Tanjiro has no other way around defeating demons than to kill him. He never once tries to talk them out of what they're doing. He understands at the end of the day that these demons are still deserving of empathy, but that doesn't change the fact that they deserve their fate. So from the very beginning, you know, he's growing stronger. He goes through his training and he learns about demons and how they work. He goes to Final Selection, and for the first time in probably ever, he experienced so much anger that he goes from the kid that like was hesitating to kill a demon that was just tormenting him to running at a demon head first with anger in his eyes. So we've already seen, like, he's going through development very quickly early on because the story has a very fast pace, especially at the beginning. And he's already learning, like, as he grows stronger, he's already learning about the horrible sides of demons, that maybe some of them don't deserve empathy, like the hand demon. And I think that's a very interesting fact about him, is that he has to learn very quickly that where he's going, what he's doing with his life, he has to be willing to kill demons specifically. Like, that is something different from a lot of other characters. A lot of other characters are like, they have to kill humans. Within Demon Slayer, you can kind of discern the difference. It's like they never are trying to kill humans, they're always trying to kill demons. But some of the humans in the story are willing to kill humans. In fact, some of them are willing to kill Tanjiro at the beginning or at the end of season 1. But I digress. So there's like that start to him. And throughout season 1, it's really just about him learning his skills and that sort of thing. You know, he meets Muzan. He wants to take him on, but he can't. He meets Tamayo, and Tamayo, of course, is like the first demon outside of Nezuko, who is a good person, and Yushiro. And he's like learning all about this world of demons, about how to turn Nezuko into a human. It's very developmental, right? We're just learning. I had an itch and now I'm all red. It's kind of annoying. Okay, so I hope you guys like this video because this is what I feel like you all like to watch. So he, you know, he has to kind of learn. We're also learning about the story. We're, as an audience, learning about demons, about Muzan, about Tamayo and Yushiro, about how people turn into demons, about how people can be turned into humans should they want to, you know, and it's already kind of breaking the stereotype from the very beginning that was only Muzan can turn humans into demons. And then we find out that, well, there is one demon, but it took her hundreds of years to get there, which I think is a great way to introduce a change to the status quo, a change to the rules that they've established. And be like, okay, so we've established that Muzan is the only one who can make demons, but when we meet Tamayo and we break that status quo, we break that rule, we have an explanation for it. And that's not really about Tanjiro, that's just about the story as a whole that I see that's a misconception, but I digress once again. And then we meet Zenitsu and Inosuke, we learn about them a little bit. Tanjiro is instantly loyal to them. Like, it's kind of crazy when you think, obviously, when he meets Zenitsu on the side of the road, he shows a very sassy side that we don't tend to see with him. Again, and that goes back to his characteristics from how he was raised, is he's always very kind, and that's truly like, yes, that's partially him, but that's very much learned from his life where it was like, okay, you have to be the older brother that's in charge, that's the emotional pillar, and he kind of translate that into always being happy, right? Zenitsu is kind of the first character that we see like annoyance, we see like disgust, like, you know, the meme face where Tanjiro's like making that ogre face at him, which is one of my favorite moments in the show because we see Tanjiro like show real emotions that he really hasn't been able to do yet. There hasn't been a ton of opportunity for him to cry. We've seen him cry, obviously. I don't know why people think he's a crybaby because it seems people are either like he's a crybaby or he doesn't cry at all. And that, I think that shows why it's like both extremes are wrong. Both extremes are just people wanting to hate on the show. But he shows like this kind of annoyance, but he is able to still trust Zenitsu very quickly. And that is because of his sense of smell. So something that I see that's a theme throughout the story with Tanjiro is how quickly he trusts people. A lot of people say that that's like, oh, he's just too nice. He's too trusting. He's trusting because he can smell if they're trying to, like he can essentially smell if they're lying to him. You know, he's able to tell like if they're trying to deceive him and that sort of thing. So like he can tell Zenitsu's not trying to deceive him, so he trusts him. He meets Inosuke, which of course their first like real interaction is very bad. So let's talk about Tanjiro throwing hands with Inosuke, because I actually love this about his character, and this comes up a lot, is that Tanjiro has one kryptonite. There is one thing, one situation that comes up multiple times in the story where every super almost practice, like I'm the eldest brother, I'm always happy, I'm always the emotional support because I have to be because I'm the eldest brother, cracks. And that is when Nezuko's life is in danger, which you can't really blame him because like I said, he kind of took all of that familial love that he had for his entire life, and he poured all of the love and protection and care that he had for all of his siblings and put it into one person because she was all he had left. And again, that's like kind of a trauma response in his situation where he's almost like unable to discern that his other siblings are gone, like because he's just like focused so much on Nezuko. And so because he's so focused on Nezuko, all of his like morals and all of his ability to kind of show that empathy and think things through, which he already has a lot of naturally, goes out the window. And he is willing to literally punch someone so hard that their ribs break. And even though like the entire time he's fighting Inosuke, he's like trying to be like the better person and say like we shouldn't be fighting because it's taboo, like demon slayers shouldn't fight each other. He still is fighting him, and he is still the one who, like, technically Inosuke, yeah, he's fighting Zenitsu, but it's more like he's just trying to get Zenitsu off because technically Inosuke, because he doesn't know the situation, is not fully wrong because he's like Zenitsu's protecting a demon, and because Inosuke is not privy to the situation, he is like, stop sheltering this demon. I need to do my job and kill the demon. And Tanjiro's not really offering an explanation to Inosuke. He's just punching him in the ribs, like, you know, so that's something, I don't want to spend a ton of time on it because I am probably going to talk about this a lot when I watch through the show, but it's like Tanjiro has this kryptonite. Tanjiro has this, if something happens, he only sees red, and everything about him that's like kind and empathetic goes out the window because his sister is in trouble. So moving on from there, you know, we kind of move into Mount Nategumo where we awaken Hinokami Kagura. And for the record, I feel like there's a misconception here that people say like he just did it out of nowhere just from watching his dad. Tanjiro knew the Hinokami Kagura because Tanjiro had to do the Hinokami Kagura after his dad died. Now, I don't know if he actually ever did it. I get the feeling that his dad probably died like right after the new year or something like that. And then, I mean, yeah, because I'm going to go off on a really random tangent for a minute because I've been trying to figure out how old Tanjiro was when his dad died because he looks very young in the flashback when he's talking to his dad and when his dad kills the bear, but then it seems like it wasn't that long ago. But we know that like Tanjiro's having this conversation with his dad about the Hinokami Kagura, saying he will do it, right? Like, I'll take over for you. And his dad says, no, I'll do it. And then he says like not long after that is when the bear came, and then his dad died 10 days after that. So I think like Tanjiro did the Hinokami Kagura, and then he died not long after, and then I think the rest of Tanjiro's family Tanjiro's family must have died the following New Year. That's the only way it makes sense. So he knew the Hinokami Kagura, he just never actually performed it. And I don't really have any proof that he never performed it. He very well might have. He very well might have performed it. But him awakening the Hinokami Kagura breathing style was not like out of nowhere. He already knew how to do it. It felt out of nowhere for us because that was our first time learning of it. But it's very clear that he knew how to do it. It's not like he was just like, oh, I recall this memory from like 10 years ago, right? He knew the steps. Had he performed it the last 2 years? No, because he was training and like life had changed. But again, I digress. This is, again, it's such a yap. Holy frick. This is going to be so long. I'm still stuck in season 1. So he's already grown a lot stronger, but he can't really take on a member of the 12 Kizuki here. And we see throughout the story, like obviously he's getting a lot stronger throughout it. But we see him training, we see him working very hard. And that's another thing that I love about him is that he's a main character that's not just like born with abilities, right? He is constantly actually someone who like he has the right things and there's like things about him that are special, but he's not the special one. Like he's not going to be able to take down Muzan by himself. He's not even able to take down Akaza by himself. So he's like working really hard, but he at the end of the day like still isn't able to defeat Rui. And then Gyu shows up, slices him super easy, and then this like that whole scene super emotional for me. It is more of like emotional because of the song and him awakening this ability when he's about to die. That's not really like specifically about him. That's something I love about this show, is how much they pull at like your emotional heartstrings throughout it. Like every big moment is more on the emotional side than it is like the flashy side, except for one, which is, the end of Entertainment District. The rest of like the big climaxes of the show, I feel like are very emotional. When you talk about Hinokami being like the best episode of season 1, we talk about Mugen Train, like the climax of that was very emotional. We talk about Swordsmith Village, the climax of that is very emotional, and I'll get there in a moment. Anyway, I'm trying to get through things a little bit faster since I've been recording for 30 minutes and I'm not anywhere near done. Yay. Okay, so yeah, Hinokami Kagura, really beautiful moment, very emotional. This is when I got really into the story, but just his ability to like call upon not just like a random memory, but this was a big part of his life growing up and he knew the steps. I want to talk about the Hashira meeting because this is where I say Tanjiro has some flaws, okay? He doesn't have many. I will argue that he, for the most part, does everything right, or as right as he possibly can be, and he always tries to be kind and empathetic, but I think that's good to have a character like that because Tanjiro's story is not about changing who you are as a person. Tanjiro's story is about understanding that the world is cruel, but people deserve kindness. And I think his story is a bit more about no matter what the world throws at you, you have to choose kindness still. And that's what I like about him. But he still has flaws. So I have a very hot take about the Hashira meeting that many people disagree with me on, and I will talk about this a lot more in length when I talk about Sanemi, whenever I get him on the wheel of names. But I actually somewhat take Sanemi's side in the situation of the Hashira meeting. Now, Sanemi is crazy. Sanemi is very overdramatic and is doing bad things. However, you have this person, Sanemi, who has gotten to where he's at through a lot of trauma, similar to Tanjiro. And obviously Tanjiro doesn't know this. And we as an audience are going to take Tanjiro's side in this situation because we have traveled alongside him since the start. We know his situation with Nezuko. We know that she's good. We know that she hasn't killed anyone. But when you take this outside source who has gotten to the level of Hashira through a lot of loss, a lot of pain, a lot of trauma, a lot of loss. Again, I say loss because he lost a lot, right? Leading up to this. He has seen so much death at the hands of demons. Nezuko was the first known demon to be able to control her urge. We, as an audience, know there's 2 more, but they've never met Tamayo Yushiro. They only know of demons who kill, and they are at the Hashira level, so they know they have fought many, 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 many demons. They have seen many people die at the hands of demons, including their loved ones, right? Then you have this kid show up and not only say, my sister is a demon, but she is fine. She doesn't kill demons, so I fight alongside her. But then that kid then goes and tells you that if you don't know the difference between a good demon and a bad demon, that you shouldn't be a Hashira or a demon slayer, whatever he said. Tanjiro is in the wrong in saying that, for the record. Because, like I said earlier, when it comes to Nezuko's safety, Tanjiro sees red even when Nezuko's safety in this very moment, what Sanemi is doing is not going to kill Nezuko, right? He's just stabbing her like in the chest. Nezuko's a demon, she's fine. Of course, Tanjiro is obviously in a situation where he thinks they're going to execute her, which would mean just like taking her out of her box or beheading her with a Nichiren blade. But he is seeing red so much where if someone even like causes pain on her, he is a completely different person who is very like angry and very just like, even though Giyu tells him to stop, he still headbutts him, right? Tanjiro, and I'm not saying this to just say like Sanemi is perfectly correct, because Sanemi is crazy and we are supposed to not like Sanemi at this moment too. But when you try and look at it from the perspective of like Sanemi and the other Hashira, Tanjiro is not acting properly, which is why like after everything is done and it's proven that Nezuko's not gonna try and bite Sanemi, that Kagaya tells him like, mind your tongue while you're talking to the Hashira. You have to show them respect because you are their subordinate, but you have experienced only 1/10 of the death and the pain that these Hashira have witnessed fighting demons, right? So Tanjiro, like, he does not listen to reason when it comes to Nezuko. When someone tries to give him a different perspective, he is very tunnel visioned on just her, which you can understand why. Again, that is born out of his trauma. That is born out of the way he was raised. He has lost everything. He has put all of the love that he has had his entire life into one person. If he does not have her, he has nothing. So it is a flaw, but it also makes sense to his character. I think that that is a very integral part of his character that I think not a lot of people talk about, because everyone hates Sonomi for that. And I want to reiterate, I did not like Sonomi, and I do not like Sonomi in this point in the story. But what Tanjiro does is not good either. But because we as an audience are privy to his situation, we know. And I say this even though like I'm yapping about Tanjiro because I love him so much. This is one of the reasons why I love him, is because this makes him feel more human. That he has this situation where he loves his siblings so much that he doesn't listen to reason, that he doesn't understand. And usually this kid who's so empathetic and can kind of read people fairly well and understand, he usually, you know, with demons is even able to understand, like, we're seeing the demon's backstory. He isn't, but he's able to understand that they've went through something. But in this moment with Sonomi, he's not able to understand that maybe Sonomi went through something, which is almost worse because the demons are threatening their lives a lot more than what Sonomi is doing in this moment. And Sonomi is on their side still. So it's a flawed way of thinking on his part that makes him a more interesting character in my book. So I want to move on from season 1 because I want to talk about Mugen Train, because there is a very big thing that people talk about very often during Mugen Train that makes me rather upset every time I see it. And I know a lot of people are saying this as a joke, but it's not a funny joke. It was maybe funny the first time, but it's such a mischaracterization of him that it's very frustrating. And of course, that is that he never cries over his family, but cries over a guy he just met. And I've already called out a couple things that I want to bring up again. So number 1 is his loyalty to people. Again, he's able to smell if they're trying to deceive him. Because he's able to smell people's emotions rather well, he latches on to people very quickly. Rengoku, he is able to discern that he's a good person who is trustworthy very quickly. So he gets attached to him very early on in the story. He also is able to witness his strength very early on, although the demons that Rengoku killed on the train in like the first 20 minutes, that was a dream sequence, in case you didn't know. But then like after he kind of fights Enmu for a little while and then goes back in the train, everyone wakes up, he's able to kind of see Rengoku's strength and his leadership. He's able to very quickly discern that he is a very strong person that he wants to learn from and chase after. Now, when Rengoku dies, Tanjiro cries more than we have seen him cry throughout the entire show. I want to quickly debunk, no, this is not the first time we've seen him cry. Yes, we have seen him cry over his family, and he's shown a lot of emotions over his family because, again, his grief and his reaction to trauma is not just to cry. It is also shock. It is also denial. It is also like, I have to push it down because I'm the eldest and I have to keep a smile on my face, right? Like that's his psychological side, is that's what's happening with him. When he cries over Rengoku, the death of Rengoku is only the catalyst of those tears, right? Like, yes, because he is very loyal and can latch on to someone very quickly because of his sense of smell, he is emotional because he's losing Rengoku. But he downright says the main reason why he's crying is because he's frustrated, because he feels like no matter what he does, the stronger he gets, the more he can't do anything. His frustration is born out of the fact that he couldn't do anything in this situation, rather than just the fact that Rengoku died. And I think that that is something that a lot of people miss. And when they're like, oh, but he doesn't show emotions, there's obviously like psychological reason for that. Like if you just pay attention to his character, it is actually much more complex than what meets the eye. You just have to look a little bit deeper than the surface level of the show, which a lot of people watch the show at a very surface level because you can get a lot of enjoyment of this show only if you pay attention surface level. It is written in a way where you are going to understand the story, you are going to understand where we're going and where where we've been and character motives without looking that deep into it, but you can look deep into it and find more. And Tanjiro's character is one of those. It's not in your face like a lot of the other characters because they get episodes dedicated to their backstory. Because his backstory is also the start of the story itself, we have to look a little bit deeper. But with Tanjiro, the Mugen Train situation is the culmination of a lot of that grief that he's been pushing down because this is his first time experiencing loss of a comrade, and one stronger than him at that, and one who died protecting him specifically at that. It's all things that make him upset because he wants to be the strongest. He feels like he's failing his job as the eldest brother because even though he's way younger than Rengoku, he wants to protect him, but he can't because he's not strong enough yet. So there's this frustration that plays into it, while also being sad that Rengoku died because he was very loyal to him very quickly. So that's kind of his mindset with Mugen Train and why I think it's very common for people to really mischaracterize him within that movie. I watched a reaction channel once where they were laughing at him when he was yelling at Akaza, and I've never watched that reaction channel since, even though I had been watching them since the start of the show, because call me like an obsessed stan of Tanjiro, but I think that if you're laughing at him, because yes, his words to Akaza are silly at best, but you have to understand where his head is at. He is so frustrated that all he can do is just yell at this guy, which his words still affected Akaza later on. So it's not like it was completely pointless, but to laugh at his emotional break in Mugen Train, which again, part of the reason why he has an emotional break is because everything that he has been through so far has been pushed down, and it is bubbling over because of this situation for multiple reasons, not just because Rengoku died. And finally, I will also call out that we literally saw him cry over his family earlier on in Mugen Train. Was it in a dream? Yes. But that is because how many characters have told him you can't cry? He was crying when he met Giyu, but Giyu told him to stop. Urokodaki taught him to just keep going. Even Rengoku in this moment is telling him the world won't stop to snuggle you when you grieve. You have to keep pushing forward. Set your heart ablaze. Like everyone who he believes and trusts is telling him to not stop and cry. So he's trying to not stop and cry. Even Inosuke tells him to stop crying. Like, it's like there's this feeling of like you don't understand, but he does cry over his family in the dream. So much so that his real self, who is sleeping, is crying. Those emotions are there. He's just pushing them down. And it's just like, it's not that hard. It's not that hard. Okay, moving on. Moving on to Entertainment District. So Entertainment District, we see a new angry side of him. I'm going to kind of fast forward to episode 6, and that is when, for the first time really ever, he sees a demon kill for complete fun, right? We see Daki just lay waste to all these people. And that, of course, he gets injured on his shoulder, but he gets so angry that he cries blood. So this is a big moment for him. This is his first introduction to a couple different things that are going to be developed throughout the story. And that's like, I think this is really the start of the see-through world for him, because he does comment on how things are moving very slowly during this time. This is actually the episode where I got obsessed with Demon Slayer as a whole. I still remember it. It was January 9th, 2022. It has been 4 years since this. I had COVID and I had nothing to do but watch Demon Slayer and Attack on Titan. And this episode of Demon Slayer was the moment where I was like, damn, this show's good. And yeah, I think this is just growing his strength. So like we've kind of talked a lot about the psychological side of him, but as the story progresses, each fight, he gets a little bit stronger. He has time in between to progress and to train. But I think an integral part of the story is to understand that these characters are growing through the main fight. Like his demons that he's facing in Swordsmith Village call it out that like when he's on the brink, when he's backed into a corner is when he experiences growth. Like that's how his character is. He learns a lot from the battle itself. If you want to call it plot armor, whatever, main characters have plot armor, so I don't think Tanjiro's is worse than anyone else's. It's the way his character is written. It just so happens that he's on the brink a lot, which I prefer over him just being fine like Sung Jin-woo all the time. That's personally my own personal preference. I like that every battle he's like unconscious afterwards, in a coma, like near death. I like that because it feels less like plot armor to me and more like, okay, he's just barely making it out alive. So anyway, Entertainment District, you know, he kind of awakens some type of new power. He just hasn't really gotten to experience yet. And of course, this is the first time that we see Yoriichi kind of, and like Daki is seeing the memories of Muzan through Tanjiro. It's kind of crazy, like, Tanjiro's like actually creeping Daki out at the cellular level, which is pretty awesome. We also see him try, you know, experience for the first time Nezuko actually go crazy, and him singing her the lullaby. He just says it out loud because he can't sing. I actually find it interesting. I'm gonna say one like random tidbit. I believe I read an interview with Hanae-san, his voice actor, at some point, because his voice actor, Hanae-san, is a good singer. Like, he actually does have songs, like, on Spotify, like, he sings, which is actually very common amongst seiyus. A lot of them do both. But he, like, actually had a hard time with this because I don't think it's actually canon that Tanjiro is tone deaf. I think in his mind, in Hanae-san's mind, Tanjiro is tone deaf. So he like forced himself to like speak it instead of sing it, to be like, I think Tanjiro is tone deaf. I guess in the Kimetsu High, Tanjiro is tone deaf. So maybe that like crosses over. But anyway, just fun tidbit. I get very emotional when he sings the lullaby to Nezuko. I feel like in that moment, like he really feels helpless, like he's unable to do anything to keep his sister from eating humans, and he had to call upon a memory that is emotional for both of them. And even just when he says like, mother, she's asleep, like it makes me a little bit emotional because he's like talking to his mom as if she's there, but she's not. And again, it just reminds me that I feel like there's just a lot of stuff he's going through that he's just not processing because he can't, like because of the situation that he's in, because he's just like always in fight or flight. He's always go, go, go. You know, I joked when I was watching Mugen Train the last time that when he wakes up, he like looks at Rengoku strangling a girl and he's like, oh, Rengoku-san. And then he like looks and thinks of something else. Like there's always like 1,000 thoughts in his brain. And this is a moment for him to kind of calm down. And when he calms down, he just like kind of calls to his mother because he's still like just a boy who has lost a lot. And made me very emotional thinking about it. And then of course, like in Entertainment District, this is a big arc for him strength-wise. There's not like a ton of difference, I would say, like character-wise. There's not a lot of exploration of his emotions in this because this is truly just about, are we strong enough to defeat an upper moon? Which we are. He does have to unlock some new things. He unlocks the Slayer mark in this, of course. And, you know, this is really just about his strength as a character and less about like the psychological side of him, like Mugen Train kind of does. I feel like Mugen Train kind of shows his emotions while Entertainment District shows his growth as a swordsman. Which brings us to Swordsmith Village. So, obviously some big things happen in Swordsmith Village. There is a reason why the season finale is such a favorite of mine, and that is because we see this culmination of his goals, of his journey so far, of everything that he's been fighting for. And he is met with two choices. You must either protect your sister, the only person you have left in your entire life. If you don't protect her, she will disintegrate in the sun. Or you have to save the villagers. So in order for you to protect your sister, you have to neglect your job as a demon slayer. But in order for you to protect the villagers, you have to neglect the person you love most. And I think it's interesting, like he goes into this panic mode state because he is such a moral person that he knows that he shouldn't protect Nezuko. He knows that he needs to go and kill the demon because in his mind, I'm sure he's also aware that not only is this demon probably going to devour these 2-3 humans before he fades away, he also is probably aware that if the demon succeeds in devouring these humans, he probably will be able to shrink down and get out and escape and then kill hundreds, if not thousands of more people. He is aware of that. But we see that he cannot decide. And it's kind of displayed in a way where it's like he can't decide, he can't decide. I personally think it was more of a, he has made his decision, he just can't bring himself to believe that. Because he's got this like inner turmoil of knowing that it's the wrong thing to do to protect Nezuko, because he needs to save everyone else, and that he's putting possibly hundreds of people in danger for one person. It's like the trolley issue, right? But he can't let go of her, and she has to kick him off. I, for one, am very glad that this went the way that it did. I do think if Nezuko had actually died here, Tanjiro would have probably gone down a bit of a dark path, because personally, while I see the sunshine side of him, I do think that there is a lot of darkness hiding inside of him because of the way he handles trauma, because of the way that he just constantly buries things down. And we do see that come to fruition at the end, which I will talk about once I can talk about manga spoilers. I think he would have gone down a pretty dark path had Nezuko had died here. I don't think it would have been like super like alone and just gone after Muzan, because I think he's smart enough to know that he wouldn't have been able to do that. But I do think he would have been just not the same person. But Nezuko lives, obviously. But I think, again, like just he is hanging, like everything about him, he's like white knuckling Nezuko. Like Nezuko is all that he can really like have to keep himself sane, right? Because he's dealing with all of these issues, but not only is Nezuko able to keep him sane, she's able to keep him kind of in the state of what he was like prior to their entire family dying, because he's able to take all of the love he had for the family, put it into her. But in this moment, he's met with the choice of losing her or failing at his job, but the job that he took to turn her back into a human. So like it contradicts each other, right? So I think personally that just the way I read the situation, I do think he had chosen to protect Nezuko. He just couldn't bring himself to say that because he knew it was wrong, but he still chose to protect her. Because, again, she's the one who kicked him. She's the one who said, you need to do it, and he only did it once she made that choice for him. I'm, like, getting shiny because I've been talking for almost an hour. My throat is getting scratchy because I've been talking for so long. And I'm only to Swordsmith Village. I should have set a timer and been like, you have 1 hour. Oh well, maybe I will for the others. This video is going to be longer than me yapping about Infinity Castle. Anyway, I don't know where I'm going with this. I'm just kind of like talking through everything and trying to explain why I love him so much. Like all of this is why I love him, okay? For the record. Like I think the name of this video is just going to be why I love Tanjiro Kamado. And then it's going to be 2 hours long and everyone's going to be like, Anyway. Yeah, I mean, Swordsmith Village makes me super emotional, and it makes me emotional not because I'm like, oh, Nezuko's dying, right? It makes me emotional because of how he handles it is very this kid is traumatized. This kid is broken and he is clinging to what he has left, all that he has left. Because yes, you can argue, okay, he has Zenitsu, he has Inosuke, but he's not putting the love that he has for Nezuko into them. Like if they did anything to threaten Nezuko, even after, he's been like so close with them, he would see red, for the record. And he would not act properly. Even if it's like, I don't even know, man. If Nezuko had like hurt a human and they were like, okay, we got to execute her, he would have like, I don't know what he would have done. He's a very complex character. Like he's got a lot of trauma that he's just not dealing with. And I think that like that at the end of the day is what truly people mischaracterize about him, is because it's just like, oh, he seems to be okay. It's like, yeah, he seems to. That's because of the way he was raised. Like, he has to. He has no other choice. He feels like he has no other choice. So, Hashira Training, I would have liked, so I'm going to talk about one thing that I wish they had kind of leaned into a little bit more. I would have liked to see a little bit more like fallout of what happened in Swordsmith Village. I feel like it's almost a little bit jarring where we go from this like very, very emotional, very celebratory because she's okay. And like obviously her being okay means he can relax, but it's almost jarring how normal he feels at the beginning. I personally would have liked to have seen a little bit more like processing of what happened. But again, I still think that kind of still calls back to how it's like, okay, well, Nezuko's okay, so I'm just gonna keep moving forward like nothing happened. Because again, that's just how he feels like he has to be all the time, right? Is, okay, she's fine. All right, back to normal, you know? Maybe not really a critique, maybe just a comment. Like, I wish we had gotten to see a little bit more. And more of a critique on the story as a whole is that, like, the end of Swordsmith Village is such a huge deal for Nezuko, and then the whole reason we're in the Infinity Castle is because of her, and yet she's like, she gets no screen time. Anyway, it's I don't know how I would have written it, though, where she would have been able to get screen time. I think I just wish there was more time between the two of them. I guess that's what it is. That's what it is. I wish after we experience this, like, super traumatizing moment where Tanjiro, like, thinks that he's lost his sister, and then she's fine, and she's talking. I wish we had gotten more just time with them at the beginning of Hashira Training, where, like, they were with each other and he was, like, emotional with her. Like, maybe add a scene where he's waking up and she's there and he's like, oh, it wasn't a dream, like, you're real. Like, I don't know. Just a thought. Just a yapping thought. But with Hashira Training, you know, he has to do this without her because she has to be protected and she has to be, you know, hidden away where Muzan can't find her. And, you know, he kind of moves into the Infinity Castle. You know, obviously in Hashira Training, he has to be the emotional pillar for Gyu because Gyu is a mess and Tanjiro is always the one that's there for everyone else, which I like that about him. But I also feel like that's part of his trauma, is that he becomes everyone's therapist, even though he has been through so much. But because he was taught in the way that he was, he just kind of goes with it. And it's like, bro, that's, again, problematic, but it's a flaw. Oh, before I talk about Infinity Castle, I wanted to briefly touch on something else that I think is a character flaw of his, and that is actually the way he handles Nezuko. So he verbalizes multiple times that she has agency, that she is not some pawn to be traded. He says that with Rui. But at the same time, I think Tanjiro can be so self-sacrificing that it's actually, like, selfish. So I thought of this idea when I was actually watching My Hero Academia, and My Hero kind of dabbles in the kind of more gray area about how a lot of the heroes within that story are actually kind of horrible people. You know, like Endeavor is a horrible person, right? Shigaraki is born out of a family of heroes that a hero was trying to be so selfless that she didn't think about what her family actually wanted. And what I mean by that is with Tanjiro, he is trying to be so selfless with his goal with Nezuko of turning her into a human that he is self-sacrificing. He is literally willing to die for the cause. But I feel like he never stops to think about the fact that maybe Nezuko doesn't want that. You know, and it's hard because Nezuko for most of the story can't talk. So it's not like she can really tell him if she is feeling that way. But Tanjiro never stops to think about how Nezuko might feel if he dies on this quest, right? Which he is very aware could happen. Tanjiro says it multiple times. He says it to Kotetsu in Swordsmith Village. He says it when he's fighting Rui. Like, when he's fighting Rui, he says, like, I'm gonna slash him while he slashes me so I can take him down with me. It's very, again, self-sacrificing. When he's talking to Kotetsu, he is telling him, like, I want to turn Nezuko into a human, but I might die in the process, because he knows that what he's doing is very dangerous and, like, he's multiple times almost died. And so I think that he never lets Nezuko be like, whoa, like, I don't want you to die. And I think that's partially because of the fact that she can't speak. He just kind of speaks for her. And even though he fights for her agency, he fights for her, like, human rights, even though she's not a human, he doesn't stop to think that maybe his actions are a bit, like, selfish, because he's willing to give up his life to turn her into a human, when what if she doesn't want that? I just think that's kind of an interesting conversation to have. I think that's a flaw of his. I think that he never stops to think, like, wait, if I die, like, would it almost be better for us to just live the way it is now so that she at least has me? And I know that he also is thinking about the fact that if she stays a demon, then he is eventually going to grow old and die, and then she will be all alone. But I don't think he's thinking about the fact that, like, what if you make her alone right now? Because he is aware. I think he wants to live, obviously. Like, he absolutely wants to live, but he is very aware that he might not. So I think that's interesting. I think that's a bit of a flaw. Not a flaw in writing, a character flaw. That he, like, is very just like, oh, she wants to be a human, so I might die. But at least, like, Zenitsu and Inosuke will be there. Yeah, but they're not you, you know? Imagine she became a human and finds out that, like, you gave your life and she never gets to see you again, and also, like, all of her other siblings are dead. I think that's interesting. I think that's something that a lot of people don't think about either, is it's, like, almost so selfless that it's selfish. So Hashira Training, again, kind of physically stronger. He manifests his mark fully, and we get into Infinity Castle. And this is where we see so much growth from him. This is where things start to come to fruition, right? Because a lot of people argue like he only just gets, like, physically stronger, but there's a lot more emotional strength to him here, and a lot of callbacks to Mugen Train that I really like. So obviously, like, he's fighting Akaza, which is already a callback to Mugen Train, because he was there, he witnessed Rengoku dying at the hands of Akaza. So he has beef with Akaza, just how Akaza has beef with him. And they're, like, mad at each other, right? When Tanjiro saves Giyu the first time. So there's 2 times that Tanjiro saves Giyu during this fight. I say saves Giyu because the first one was absolutely. The second one was, I see people saying he was saving him, but I don't think he was because Akaza was attacking himself. But the first time is when Akaza is about to put a fist through Giyu and make Giyu a donut. Tanjiro is able to stop that from happening by slicing off Akaza's arm after he's in the see-through world at this moment. This is not just a big moment for him strength-wise. This is like a full circle moment for him. And I talked about this a lot when I talked about Infinity Castle, but in case anyone is watching this, if you're still watching, because I've been recording for 65 minutes, which I'm sure when you're watching this, it's gonna be less time because I'm gonna be editing out, like, random stuff. But so this is a full circle moment for Tanjiro because he kind of, like, knows, and he knows what Akaza is doing because he's in the see-through world, so he can, like, kind of, it's moving slow, and he's able to see, like, his muscles and kind of where he's moving. But in this moment, Tanjiro saves Giyu from the exact same fate of Rengoku, and this is a full circle moment for him because he is going from the kid who was injured and couldn't do anything to the person who protected the technically stronger one. Because, like, Giyu is technically still stronger than Tanjiro in this moment, kind of. It's up in the air. It's not really, it's not supposed to be like, oh yes, absolutely, they're stronger than the other, because the whole point of Demon Slayer is that they all have to work together. But I digress. Again, power scaling conversations are mind-numbingly dumb amongst Demon Slayer fans. Like, so the first time when he truly saves Giyu here, because he absolutely does, he saves him from the exact same fate as Rengoku, and it's a very full circle moment. But something that people don't talk about, and I don't think he was actually saving Giyu, again, because Akaza was attacking himself, but when Tanjiro, like, runs to Giyu and, like, gets him out of the range of attack, he says, like, Akaza is about to unleash the attack that he did on Rengoku. So he is also acting on his memory of Rengoku's death. And in my mind, when he does that, because he's no longer in the see-through world, like, he's already passed out once and come back and stuff. But the way he runs towards Giyu, the way I see it, is that he so desperately does not want to lose another person he looks up to. So he is willing to put himself on the line in order to protect Giyu in this moment, even though he doesn't know that Akaza is fighting himself, that he's going to attack himself. But I just think, again, that's a callback to, really, this entire fight is about his emotions, about losing Rengoku and what he learned from that. But in this case, he's able to fight, and he ends up being the one to behead Akaza, and I still say it, he defeated Akaza. Akaza just dealt the final blow, which you can't even really argue he did. I feel like people forget that, like, yes, Akaza was, like, doing blows on himself, but he still, like, didn't hit himself and then he died. Like, it wasn't until he finally, like, got to see Koyuki again. You can technically argue Koyuki is the one who dealt the final blow, but his attacks on himself were just as useless as Tanjiro beheading him. Tanjiro, the way he fought, the way he did things, is what defeated Akaza, because that's what got Akaza to remember his past. So I still say, Tanjiro defeated Akaza, he just didn't physically kill him. So, anyway, from here, I am going to have to talk about manga spoilers. Oh my god, this video is so long. This is fun though. I'm so glad I'm doing this, holy moly. So, I'm going to talk about manga spoilers from here on out because we are at the end of the anime. So if you don't want to be spoiled, here is your chance to turn it off. I will do a wrap up, so I'll try and do like you'll see the timestamps so that you can just skip to the wrap up on this video. So anyway, let's get into some manga spoilers. Really all that's left is him fighting Muzan with the rest of the Demon Slayers, because obviously we still have a lot of fights in the Infinity Castle, but Tanjiro is not a part of them. We do see him sob over the news of Genya and Muichiro, and I do think that's an important thing to call out, because again, like, people always are arguing that he doesn't cry a whole lot, but he does. It just, he has to be in a certain moment, and I think like when he hears the news of Muichiro and Genya, that is the first time that he finds out that people that he saw a bit more as peers, like especially Genya, like Muichiro and Genya were both his age. So this is his first time experiencing losing comrades of his age. And I think that hit him a little bit harder because it was like, I think he saw a future with them, right? I think he saw a future with everyone. He wanted everyone to live. But I think like with Genya and Muichiro, that was like the hardest for him. And that's really the only ones from there on out that we see him react to, considering when everyone else dies, he technically dies too. So a lot of people say that they don't like the fact that he is not directly related to Yoriichi, that it's confusing, that it's, you know, like dumb, that he's just not a part of that bloodline. But I actually really like what that calls to, because I mentioned it at the beginning of this video. Tanjiro's not the chosen one. He is not this like special being. Does he have special abilities? Yes, because he can do sun breathing, as we learned during this, like, we've been learning throughout the story, but it finally comes to fruition at the end, right? That he switches to saying sun breathing, which I'm so excited to hear. Holy moly, when he goes from Hino Kami Kagura to Hino Kokyo, I'm gonna cry. I'm gonna cry a lot in these next two movies. I'm just gonna be in a constant state of cry. It's gonna be great. Pray for me. Anyway, I really, really liked that he was the descendant of the Kamado family where they couldn't do it, right? They learned it. And I think that calls back to his character being someone who's very analytical, and he like remembers things super well and is able to kind of deduce what's happening on the battlefield very quickly, but he's not like physically the most strong, right? He's had to fight tooth and nail to get to where he's at. He is special, but he's not like the special one like we see with so many other stories. And I like that it went that route, because to me, that's refreshing. So many times the main character like starts out as the underdog, but becomes the strongest. I like that he's kind of always somewhere in the middle. He's not like the underdog, but he's not like this crazy special person like the Avatar, right? He cannot defeat any of them by himself. And while I think by the end he does technically surpass everyone else, like he becomes the strongest in the end, he never reaches the level of Yoriichi. And I think like that's partially due to the fact that it's only been a year since he became a demon slayer, so he just never has the time to gain that kind of strength, that maybe he could have gone to the level of Yoriichi, but he wasn't born with that ability. He had to fight and train for every single thing that he had. So I personally really like that it went the route where he was not directly related to Yoriichi, but he still was the inheritor of sun breathing. I understand why some people don't like that. Like, that's more of a preference thing. Like, my husband would have preferred that he had just been part of the bloodline, but I like that we kind of went a different route than that, because I think it made it more interesting, and it really honed in on the idea of the story where it's like, it's really about humanity, the will of humans being so strong that they can take down a foe that's so much stronger than them. Tanjiro dies, what, 3 times during this? Twice. So he gets hit with the attack in the eye, which like pretty much kills him, but he was just alive enough to make it. And then at the end of the battle, I don't want to talk too much about the battle because I want to allow myself to talk about it as it gets animated. But I'm really looking forward to the Muzan fight. I'm not gonna lie, I think it's gonna be really well done by Ufotable. And I really, really love that Tanjiro, he's getting stronger, but he never fully gets there. I like that because his story is never about becoming the best. He is never a Midoriya. He is never a Naruto where it's like, there's this goal of strength, right? Like Midoriya wanted to be the best hero. Oh my gosh, hero. I can say that without saying it in a Japanese accent. My brain is starting to fall apart. You can hear it in my voice too, I'm getting very scratchy. Naruto wants to be Hokage, right? And those goals are valiant. I'm not saying that Naruto and Midoriya are less well-written than Tanjiro. I'm just saying I like better how Tanjiro's goal has always been for Nezuko, and it's always been to defeat Muzan. So there's no point in him being the strongest. There's no point in him officially becoming a Hashira, because that was never the point of his character. That was never what he wanted. That was never really a goal. Becoming a Hashira was only a goal because Rengoku said it, and he felt he needed to get to that level in order to achieve his actual goals. So I'm kind of jumping ahead, but the fact that he never becomes a Hashira, the fact that he is like the strongest of present day at the end, but never reaches Yorichi's level, it's not even like I don't mind. I kind of, again, like that it went that route because that was never his story. That was never what he wanted. Why would I have to see that happen in order for me to feel that his character arc was well written, right? I think that's just kind of like reaching for a reason to dislike the story or dislike him personally. So I like that it went that route, that he never like actually received Hashira. It's fun to think about an AU where he became a Hashira, or I think that he maybe should have been invited to the final Hashira meeting because he obviously was Hashira level by the end. And I also don't like how the Core Records book says that they were all like Kinoe. I was like, they should have been Hashira at the end. Like they all should have gotten that promotion, just been like, you're Hashira, congratulations. But again, that wasn't ever the point. That wasn't the point of the story at all. So I personally think, and again, this is just kind of my perception of how it's done. I think when he like woke up from his initial death, when Murata is like, Muzan's back into a corner, we need to defeat him, and it like wakes him up, right? And that's after he's like experiencing all of the memories of Sumiyoshi, and then he unlocks sun breathing. I think he still knew he was not going to live. Like he's talking about trying to make it to sunrise. I think he knew he was not going to survive this battle, which is both like interesting, but also further defends my point of his like self-sacrificing mindset. Although he really had no choice in the matter. Like it's not like he wanted to die in this battle. He just knew at that point, like what had happened to him, that his body was not going to last past defeating Muzan because of the adrenaline was pretty much keeping him alive at this point, right? So I think he already knew he was going to die, which is why when the sun is starting to rise and Muzan is like turning into this baby, I only recently found out, because it's hard to tell in the manga, that it seems that he headbutted Gyu out of there so that Gyu did not get swallowed up with him, which is good. Like, that's not necessarily self-sacrificing. I think it's more of a, again, he knew he wasn't going to make it, so he might as well be the one to get swallowed. And then he did turn his sword red while he was in there. You just can't really tell in the manga because it's like a little small panel and it's in black and white. So it took me a while to figure out that that's what was going on there. And him turning his sword red is what ultimately led to Muzan's demise, which also led to his, because I think in that moment was like the last of what he had left and he died. Now I'm just like going through the story. So that's just like a call out, I guess, that I felt like he knew the entire time after he woke up from his first death that like his body wasn't going to make it. And Loki, thanks Muzan for turning him into a demon so that he could survive. So this is gonna be, I'm almost done actually. We're at 78 minutes currently. So a lot of back and forth on the idea of Demon Tanjiro. My only real complaint is I wish we got more, not like physical time, because I think he could only be a demon for such a short period of time because there wouldn't have been a way to write it where he did not kill someone. And Tanjiro killing someone while he was a demon, they wouldn't have allowed him to live and he would have gone to hell. even though he lived his life as well as he did. So he could only remain a demon for, what is it chronologically, like 5 minutes. I do wish the story as a whole spent a little bit more time. I wish we had maybe kind of developed what Gyu was saying a little bit, where he felt like Tanjiro was kind of trying to control himself, but it didn't seem like he fully did. You know, when I said earlier in this video that he has like darkness within him, he just pushes it down. I fully stand by the fact that when he becomes a demon, the main reason why he is so feral and is unable to control himself for the most part, really only able to partially control himself with Nezuko. And he's not even able to do it that much. Like, he still bites her and digs his fingers into her and hurts her. I personally think that one of the reasons why Tanjiro is unable to control himself the way that Nezuko was able to instantly control herself like that is because when he is a demon, that took everything that he had pushed down. The entirety of the entire story came to the top. Now, there's also the fact that, one, I believe Muzan gave him all of his blood instead of some. So it's like, you can argue that that was just Muzan in Tanjiro's body. You can also argue that, like, he genuinely, like, was clinically dead. Like, he was done. It was like his cells were still alive, which is, I think, clinically dead. So, like, technically it was like his corpse rather than, because I feel like a lot of people, when they get turned into a demon, they're not like that far gone like he was. Anyway, there are those arguments, but I do think that a lot of the reason why he is unable to control a lot of his urges and almost killed multiple people, and would have had Gyu not been there, or Nezuko, because like he almost killed Inosuke, is because like every single feeling of anger and rage that he had kind of kept pushing down came to the surface when he was a demon. And I think it's an interesting exploration of him as a character for him to go through that at the end. I think they were also foreshadowing it for a while, like all the way back in Entertainment District. All the way back in season 1, he tells Tamayo, like, if you make medicine to turn Nezuko into a human, we'll be able to not just save her, but many people. And I think he more meant that as a, if we can turn more demons into humans, we can save a lot of people. But I feel like that was kind of a little tidbit, like, yeah, because it's gonna save you too. I think it was an interesting way to go to the story. Yes, you can argue that it was like, okay, it was the only way we could make Tanjiro survive, and some people wanted him to die at the end of the story, which I think makes sense. I think I would have been very sad if the story ended with him dying, but I would have understood the story going that route because he achieved his goals. He achieved turning Nezuko into a human, and he achieved defeating Muzan. So, like, if he had died at the end, it would have been poetic, I guess, but I would have been very upset. So I see the argument that people have, but I think it's an interesting character study of him because he was not able to do what his sister did. He was not able to fully control himself the way Nezuko did, and the only way they could keep him from killing people was to turn him back into a human. And he had to fight that. Like, he had to get the help of others, and he says that all the time, like, I can only do what I do because others help me. And it remained true until the end of the battle, where he was only able to fight out of that weird like consciousness that he was in with the help of his dead loved ones and the help of his loved ones who were still alive in the very end. So I personally just feel like him becoming a demon was the explosion of emotions that he's been hiding the entire time, and gave us a look as to like the darkness inside of him. And I know, like, we saw his soul in Mugen Train and it was perfectly clear and it was beautiful, but I do think that it was tarnished at the end. I don't think it was like a storm after that. I think that there was just some like storm clouds in there, maybe. And I think that's real. I think that's raw, and I think that's like something that I kind of expect out of his character. And I'm not going to talk about 25 because I actually have a lot of thoughts on that. That will be an entirely new video. And I have a lot more thoughts on Tanjiro. I feel like I've kind of got everything that I had on my list that I wanted to talk about. And I am running close to yapping for nearly an hour and a half. So I do want to kind of wrap up the video here. Overall, Tanjiro just means so much to me because, one, it is a character that I like kind of look up to, but it just matches with the style of character that I tend to like. You know, he goes through so much, but he chooses to remain kind. He has every right to let the world burn, but he chooses kindness instead. And that is partially because that's who he is, but that's also partially because he is choosing to take the pain and trauma that he has and push it down. And I think that a lot of people miss the fact that it's not that he isn't experiencing these emotions, it's that he's choosing to not show it. And the story probably could have done better to explore that a little bit more if it had given us moments where it was like he was alone and dealing with his emotions. You know, like, is it weird that I, as a Tanjiro fan, wish we had gotten the scene where we saw him like all alone crying in a corner because he had to let it out in some way? I don't know. And we kind of saw that. We saw that after Mugen Train, like Nezuko was there. I wish we had seen that after Swordsmith Village where, you know, he got to kind of show his emotions over the fact that he almost lost her. But, you know, the story just chose to not go that route. I think when it comes to media, there is a lot of subjectivity. I mean, all of it's subjective. It's all based off of preference, and no author is going to make every single person happy. No author is going to be able to make an ending that everyone is going to love. But I think they did very good with what they had. And I think Demon Slayer absolutely deserves the love that it gets, obviously. In closing, Tanjiro is a character that I think is severely misunderstood by the fandom, and I hope that even if one person watches this video and says, my feelings on him have changed a little bit and I like him a little bit better, then I consider this a success, because Tanjiro is a character that deserves a lot more love. And yeah, there's a lot of amazing characters in Demon Slayer, 100%, and that's one of the reasons why it's such a good story, is because so many of the characters are so well done. But I think he gets forgotten a lot, and a lot of times main characters just do, because we're experiencing their story through their eyes, so we get to feel a little bit more acutely for other characters because they have such big moments that the main character just kind of is there the whole time. But I think he deserves more love than he gets. But with that, I think that's all I had to say about this. Yep, there will be more videos where I talk about him. I mean, I'm doing a Demon Slayer watch through right now, so I'm gonna bring up a lot of what I just talked about and talk more in depth about it as well, because I'm gonna like work through the story. That's gonna be it for this video. I made it, I did it, wow! Thank you so much for watching today's video. If you made it this far, drop a green and black heart in your comment so that I know you made it the full almost hour and a half of recording. I'm sure this video will end up being about an hour, but let me know that you made it all the way to the end by leaving a green and black heart. Also, don't forget to follow me on my socials at Hannah Malay on Instagram and TikTok, and at lookingnerdy on X. But thank you so much for watching. And don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, all the fun things. I'm gonna stop yapping before I lose my voice. Thank you. Matane.